lounging, son.
Welcome back to the Comic Lounge. My name is Ryan, and today I'm going to be going through one of my favorite comic books of all time, one of my favorite titles of all time, favorite runs of all time, known as the Green Lantern Green Arrow run by Denny O'Neil, Neil Adams. Obviously, this is not an original because I can only afford to spend so much money on comics. It's definitely a run that I have multiple versions of. I have the trades. I have the absolute edition of this run, which is definitely something I plan on going through on the channel in the future. But I did want to spotlight this. DC has been putting out phenomenal facsimile reprints on newsprint. And I've even heard people, complain about the way Marvel does it because they do it on that glossy, stark white paper. So the colors look kind of, I don't know, at times can look a little garish. I'll still buy them because I like reading those old stories in like a single issue form. And it's cool to see the old ads. But DC has been putting out, I have a stack of them, from DC and Marvel. So I definitely plan on doing it. I don't know if I've been toying with the idea of doing like a facsimile Friday segment on the channel. But for now, I'm just going to simply do them, sporadically as I, kind of get the urge to talk about it. But this is one I wanted to talk about. Famous cover, obviously. You have Green Arrow's sidekick Speedy right on the cover, and they don't hold anything back. Interesting that it still says approved by the Comics Code Authority, because I think at the time they were still like not allowing drug use in comic books, and to even have it on the cover, you have the needle, the spoon, all of it right there, and he's like, look, you have all the answers, Green Arrow. Well, what's your answer to that? My ward Speedy is a junkie, and DC attacks youth's greatest problem, drugs. This is a time when comic book covers, I love when you have dialogue on the covers, these striking images. I also like, when it has to do with something in the story, and I think that sometimes in current comics we've kind of lost some of that. That's the conversation for another day. I really love this run, and I wanted to talk about it, like I said. So again, look, you can kind of, I guess it's a little hard to see, but you can see that the colors look very similar to what they were in the original comic book. You got Ollie, aka Oliver Queen, Green Arrow, walking down the street, kicking a bucket, and you got these guys in the cut, right? And they're about to do something. They obviously are carrying sticks. They look like they're about to like rob somebody. And of course they stick him up. But if they only knew who they were, that they want his money. He's like, I'm in no mood, dude. My woman just told me she's not going to be home when I call anymore. Been a bad night. Just step aside. And maybe you didn't understand. Like, no, I got it, but you picked the wrong victim in Oliver Queen. I've got a lot of mad at me that wants out. And boom, just systematically takes them all down. This one dude has a crossbow, shoots it right at Ollie, and it goes straight into him, and he's taken out by some random drug addicts on the street. Now, full disclosure, I'm currently 11 years sober, so this story hits for me because I too had an issue with substance abuse, and while I read this way before that was ever a problem for me, like reading it after the fact in sobriety has definitely hit me a little bit harder. Seeing it. And obviously this continues over into the next issue, which we're not going to be covering today, but it's interesting the way they kind of deal with, the drug epidemic, especially in the early 70s. I think they handle it in a very, very unique and honest way. And I think that it's commendable. I'm so sad. I would have loved to have gotten a chance to talk with Denny or Neil about this and kind of get their, I'm sure they talk about in interviews, but to kind of get their direct feelings on this, because it is such an important part of comic book history. Ollie's trying to get up. The cop walks by, he's sleep it off because he's just thinking he's a, a drug addict on the street or an alcoholic. Makes his way all the way to the hospital. And they're like, we're busy. Could you just come back in the morning? And, it's like, oh, wow. Modern civilization. How wonderful. And luckily, it chipped the bone, but they caught it before infection. And he wants to see the arrow. And he says, it looks familiar. And, he asks for a phone. He calls his bud, Hal Jordan, a.k.a. Green Lantern. this is the run that really solidified their friendship as one of the best friendships in comic books. I know a lot of people also think of Hal and Barry, as one of the best friendships, but really the dynamic between Ollie and Hal, because they have such opposing views, and that was the impetus behind this entire run with these two characters. Is really they're called the hard traveling heroes, and I love this old ad for these like custom monster scenes, building kits. But he goes to help his friend, and this is where we see he's like, Hal's like, I know you're probably disturbed because you got shot with a crossbow, but like Chick anyway, he's like, no, it's one of mine. And he's like, I've left plenty of them at the scene, so it's kind of hinting at something, but not really giving you everything. And he's like, he's worried, he hasn't seen Speedy in a month, and obviously we all know why he hasn't seen him. And, he hasn't really paid attention to him. He's been strung out with his romance, and he hasn't had time for much else. And he asks Hal to help him. We see this druggie go up to the dealer, and he's like, no, dude, like, you got to get the hell out of here. And he's like, no, please let me help. I can't take the pain. And you can just see the tears pouring down because, like heroin, you get dope sick and stuff. And he's withdrawing. He's like going cold turkey. And Hal's like, what do you mean? What's cold turkey? He's like, man, you can't be that dumb. He's on dope. And apparently this dude Bowden he's a pusher, and like they jump in, they attack him, they take him out, and he's just like, just the way that Neil depicts this dude like in withdrawals, like it gives me chills just looking at it. Then we get we come back to some of those guys that were going up against Ollie when they're mugging him. And you see this dude sitting here, and they call him Roy. And and like this dude's like, you got a reason for being a hophead, which I've never heard that phrase, but he's like, it's personal, look at the ceiling. So you would think Roy would be kind of freaked out by this, right? Like Hal and Ollie are coming in, and he's like, what, Speedy, I can't say I'm surprised to find you in this hole. And Speedy's like, what, you're not? Like, so he's thinking like, oh, does he know something? And he's like, well, no, you vanished, so you had to have been going undercover. And that's what he thinks he was doing, going undercover to take down a drug lord and drug dealers. But that's obviously far from the case. So we as the reader know, but Ollie and Hal are not aware. And again, this is what you'll see a lot of in the book. It's this back and forth between Hal and Ollie. Good cop, bad cop. He's more the straight man. He's the one that, as they call the bleeding heart liberalist, that they would call him. But probably one of my favorite depictions of these characters is in this run, and this is just such a great book. And they're saying they're going to help take out the drug dealer, but nope, that's not true. They knock out Hal, knock out Ollie, and they fucking drug the two of them. This is a wild comic book in today's standards, but in 1971, I have to think this is unprecedented in superhero comic books. I mean, injecting your two heroes with heroin. It's insanity. You know what else is insanity? These prices for these diamond rings, because they are nowhere near this anymore. But anyway, so we have, the two of them are fucking doped up, knocked out, and, the drug dealer is like, all right, I guess you deserve something. We're a fair outfit here. Live big. And he hands them each some dope, and they go their separate ways. And Roy comes and, to snap them out of it, and he's like, we need to get out of here. He's like, if you don't use your power ring to fly, so we're all going to be rotting in jail. And Hal's still doped up. You can see the way it's affecting him, because even his constructs are like all fucking crazy and stuff like that, which is I think a cool way to kind of get into the head of like how he's feeling, right? Like very evil, very demonic and monstrous, which is what drugs are. Eventually they're able to get away, and as we close the book, they're talking about how shitty they feel. He's like, man, Lantern, we dumped it. We lost the bad guys. We lost the evidence. We were suckered by slimy junkies. And he's like, if Speedy here hadn't deduced where those punks were taking us, the law would have heaved us into the clink and swallowed the key. The dialogue here, I still don't understand why people want to poison themselves with heroin pills. The whole the whole sick bag. And Roy's like, maybe I could throw some light on it. And he's like, say, and this is this is such a great piece of dialogue. Say a young cat has someone he respects, looks up to, an older man, and say the older man leaves, chases around the country, gets involved with others, and ignores his young friend. Then the guy might need a substitute for friendship. He might seek it in junk. And he has no sympathy. He's like, oh yeah, he's like, oh yeah, this still lacks is violin music. I'm touched. My stomach is, and goes off. And as Hal leaves, Ollie comes back in. We see another drug deal. So it's just, drugs are so prevalent in the city. And as he goes back to Speedy, he's like, can I interest you in a bowl of chili? And he's like, oh dear God, you're on drugs. You're really a junkie. And then he's like, who else did you think I was talking about? Kind of wish DC would have done the facsimile of both this issue and the next. Obviously, I know 85 is like the one that people think of, because of the cover, obviously. But really great issue. Just phenomenal storytelling. Neil Adams is a master of comic book art. Just breathtaking. So you got some old letters pages here, and you have a classic Green Lantern story set from the early Silver Age, which is pretty cool. But I just wanted to spotlight the main story. Just kind of flip through this real quick. These facsimiles, man, they're where it's at. I can't say enough good things about DC and what they've been doing. They are still putting them out. They've done so many, so you can be sure I'll have some more of them on the channel. Hit up your local comic shop, see if they got any in stock, because I know my shop always we'll order a few copies for the shelf, but they're definitely worth every penny, and you don't have to drop hundreds of dollars on them. So go pick them up, and make sure you follow us on social media. All the links are down below. Hit the subscribe button so you're notified every time a new vid drops. And on that note, I'm out.